protected his friend Gino, who actually did worse things than Johnny. Because of Johnny's fame, Gino hasn't faced the consequences he deserved. Gino, Johnny Somali's friend and streaming partner, has indeed been a part of many controversial moments alongside him. Here, Gino is talking about how he hasn't been able to escape Korea.
I don't know what to do, bro. I don't know what to do, chat. What should I do? The embassy is literally closed right now. I cannot go to the embassy right now. The embassy is closed. The embassy is useless. That's what I'm saying.
Gino has appeared in streams where they both engaged in inappropriate behavior and instigated confrontations in public places across Japan and South Korea. Reports suggest that Gino's involvement has contributed to the chaos, particularly as the duo has been accused of harassing locals, causing disturbances, and generally showing disrespect toward cultural landmarks. Gino is similar guilty like Johnny Somali because they did it together, but not many people are talking about Gino because Johnny Somali is more famous than him. Somali got into trouble while Gino escaped without even thinking about Johnny Somali.
The number one snake. Moxie was on my side the whole fucking time. She was snaking these niggas out while they was snaking me. Come on now, talk to me.
But Gino isn't face anything. It's shameful that Gino isn't facing the same punishment as Johnny. Both of them act like menaces and ruin the reputation of foreigners in these countries. Another one commented that it's really unfair that Gino hasn't faced any real consequences like Johnny Somali has. Both of them are equally guilty, acting like complete menaces and ruining the reputation of respectful foreigners in these countries. Authorities need to step in and hold them both accountable. If we look at some of his video, then we can notice that how he harassed girls. In this video, Gino repeatedly asked a Korean woman, "Can I eat your poo?"
What the f***?
Than Johnny Somali.
Like that? Oh my god! Oh my! Yo! Yo! Oh my! Yo, Gino, stop! No, go. Gino, what the f***?
In here, Gino made extremely inappropriate and harassing remarks toward a Korean woman, highlights a pattern of offensive conduct that has provoked widespread condemnation. Due to this incident and other incidents involving Gino, Johnny Somali's friend is now wanted by South Korean authorities. This kind of behavior not only reflects a severe lack of respect for cultural norms, but also raises concerns about the misuse of social media and streaming platforms to spread disrespect and harassment in foreign countries. Actions like these contribute to the negative perception of streamers who engage in content tourism, where they act provocatively or aggressively abroad to attract attention and views. The consequences have often been limited for people like Gino, who might escape direct punishment due to the focus on the more prominent figure, Johnny Somali.
I don't know what to do, chat. I honestly don't know anymore. Go back to America? What do you mean they're looking for me? I'm in my hotel right now, bro. I'm literally in my hotel right now. The cops, Minami already knows they know our hotel. If they want me, I'm sitting right here, bro. I have no reason to run, bro. There's no point in running. If you have a warrant out for your name, there's no point in running. What's the point of running? They're going to catch me regardless. I'm not going to around. I'm going to sit here, bro.
All right, get ready for this one. This deep dive takes us into some murky waters. We're looking at international social media and one guy in particular, Gino.
Yeah?
You sent us this YouTube video analysis.
Right.
All about Gino and his, well, antics with Johnny Somali.
Yes, this is a fascinating case. It shows how things get complicated when you mix entertainment, bad behavior, and international travel.
It's a lot. From what I saw, Gino and this Johnny Somali have been traveling through Japan and South Korea, and they've left a trail of incidents, confrontations, harassment, messing with cultural landmarks. Like, where do we even begin?
And that's exactly why this deep dive is so interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not just looking at what they did, but also how people are reacting, what the legal side looks like, and what it all means for accountability, especially now with everyone creating content all over the world.
Okay, let's dive into specifics. The YouTube video shows a few instances where Gino's behavior is, honestly, it's pretty shocking.
Right.
One clip shows him making these incredibly inappropriate comments to women on the street. It's not just words either. He's filmed harassing two women, like really aggressive.
It's interesting, isn't it? He's not just having a private conversation. He's doing this all on camera, knowing it's going online for everyone to see. So it makes you wonder, is this really harassment? Or is he doing it for the views?
Then there's that incident where he's dancing at a cultural landmark, like really provocatively. And when the authorities try to step in, he just laughs it off and says dancing isn't illegal. It's almost like he's trying to see how far he can push things.
That's a key point. It really shows how different cultures have different ideas about what's acceptable. Like Gino's argument about dancing, it might be true in some places, but he's completely ignoring the culture and norms of where he is. It raises a really important question. When you're traveling, do you only have to follow the law, or are you also responsible for respecting local customs, even if it's not illegal?
That's a great point. The YouTube video mentions a similar case where a YouTuber was deported. Yeah, not for breaking any laws, but for being offensive to local customs. So there's precedent for taking action, even when no laws are broken.
Exactly. And that's where it all gets a bit murky, legally speaking. Deportation is serious. It's usually for people who are a danger to public safety or the country's security. But using it for cultural insensitivity, that opens up a whole debate about what harm even means when you're dealing with people from all over the world. It really makes you think, where do individual rights end and cultural sensitivity begin? Who gets to make those decisions? These are questions we need to figure out as content creation becomes more and more global.
Okay, so we've got Gino, right, engaging in some pretty questionable behavior.
Right.
But here's the thing, and this is where it gets interesting. The video says that while Johnny Somali, his partner in all this, has been facing legal trouble, arrests, charges, even a possible travel ban, Gino, nothing. He seems to be avoiding any real consequences.
That's a big reason why people are so upset about this whole situation. A lot of viewers are asking if Gino's getting a free pass just because he's not the main guy, not the star of the show. It speaks to a bigger concern about fairness and how the law works, especially with these online personalities who are all over the place, crossing borders all the time.
It's more than just fairness, though, right? If there are no consequences, won't that just encourage other creators to do the same?
Of course.
Thinking they can get away with pushing it too far in other countries?
Absolutely. It sets a dangerous precedent. If people think they can use cultural differences and loopholes to get ahead, it could lead to a huge increase in this content tourism.
Content tourism?
Yeah, the video uses that term.
Yeah.
It's where creators deliberately cause trouble in other countries just for the views and attention.
Wow. So it's not just these two guys. This is like a bigger trend.
Yeah, it's fascinating, but also a little worrying. And it's not just individuals either. Whole groups, even brands are doing it, using controversial travel content to get noticed, because everyone's fighting for attention online these days.
It's not just a couple of guys causing a scene. It's almost like a change in how we make and watch content, with everyone trying to be more shocking to stand out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the conversation needs to go beyond just what these two did. We need to look at the systems that are encouraging this kind of behavior.
I was looking at the comments on this YouTube video.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people are angry and disappointed, not just at Gino, but at the whole situation. There's this feeling that he's getting away with something, and it's leading to a lot of debate.
Yeah.
Some people are even saying YouTube and other platforms need to do more to stop this kind of content.
Yeah, that's an important point. People are becoming more aware of how power works online. They're holding creators accountable, but they're also starting to question these platforms, the ones who host this content and make money from it. What's their responsibility in all of this?
It's not just the viewers either. The video mentions that authorities in South Korea know about Gino. They might even try to question him, even though there aren't any official charges yet.
Really?
Well,
that adds a whole other level of complexity. It seems like law enforcement is starting to realize they need to address this kind of online behavior, but they're still trying to figure out how. They're trying to keep up with how quickly things change online.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to see how this all plays out.
And get this, there's this Korean individual who is allegedly helping Gino and Johnny Somali.
No way!
Yeah, they're even accused of defending their behavior to the authorities. It's like they have a local accomplice helping them pull off these stunts.
This brings up a really interesting cultural aspect. Some people might see the involvement of a local as support for their behavior, as if it somehow makes it okay in that culture. But others might see it as a betrayal, fueling even more anger towards them.
This is already messy, and now there's another layer to it. I think this is where the real deep dive begins. We've gone from specific examples of Gino's behavior to a bigger conversation about culture, legal stuff, and what role these platforms play in controlling content.
Exactly. And this is just the beginning. We still have to look at what could happen to Gino, what the legal precedents are for holding collaborators accountable, why people engage in this content tourism, and what the future of online content moderation looks like in a globalized world.
So we've laid the groundwork. We know who's involved, what they did, and how people are reacting.
Right.
Now we need to dig deeper into the heart of the matter.
Okay.
What are the legal, cultural, and ethical implications of Gino's actions?
Right.
And what does this case tell us about how international social media is changing?
I'm ready to dive in.
Yeah.
Let's see what we can uncover. Let's think about what could actually happen to Gino, legally speaking. He hasn't been charged with anything yet, but that video mentioned that South Korean authorities are watching him and they might do something. So what legal grounds do they have? What can they actually go after him for?
That's a great question, especially since he hasn't really broken any specific laws that we've seen, not in the traditional sense. It's more about his behavior, how it goes against cultural norms and expectations, which is harder to define in a legal way.
You're right. That is a key point. Most legal systems are set up for more concrete things like stealing, assault, vandalism. But with online stuff, especially social media, it's not so clear. What does harm even mean in the digital world? Can you prosecute someone for offensive speech or cultural insensitivity the same way you would for a physical crime?
Right. The video brought up deportation as a possible consequence. Can you explain that a little more? Like, what does it mean in this situation, and could it actually apply to Gino?
Sure. Deportation is basically when a country forces a foreigner to leave. It usually happens if someone violates their visa, commits a serious crime, or is considered a threat to public safety. In Gino's case, if the authorities decide his behavior is a big enough problem, disruptive or indecent, they might try to deport him.
So it's not just about breaking a specific law. It's more about whether his actions are seen as harmful or damaging to the country he's in.
Exactly. And that's what makes this case so interesting from a legal perspective. It challenges the traditional ideas of jurisdiction and who's responsible. It forces us to ask how we can apply existing laws to online behavior when it crosses borders.
And it's not just deportation. The video also mentioned travel bans.
Right.
How do those work? Are they a common punishment for this kind of thing?
A travel ban basically means you're not allowed to enter a specific country. It's usually for people who have committed serious crimes, are suspected terrorists, or pose a risk to national security. But in this context, a travel ban could be used to stop someone from going back to a country where they've caused trouble, like Gino.
It's definitely a deterrent, especially for creators who need to travel for their content.
Exactly.
Would that ban only apply to the country where the offense happened? Or could it be more widespread?
That depends on a lot of things.
Yeah.
International agreements, legal precedents, the specifics of the offense, how much of a threat the person is seen as, and even the political relationship between countries.
This all brings up an interesting legal question. If Gino didn't break any laws, can he still be punished just for being offensive? Where's the line, and who decides?
That's the big question, and it's something legal experts and policymakers are struggling with right now. How do you balance free speech with protecting cultural values and social harmony? It's a tough one.
The video mentioned a legal precedent about holding collaborators accountable. They gave an example of a musician whose bandmate was caught smuggling drugs.
Yeah, I remember that.
Even though the musician wasn't directly involved, they still get in trouble just for being associated with it. Could that apply to Gino?
It's an interesting comparison. The legal idea there is called accomplice liability, or aiding and abetting. It basically means you can be held responsible for a crime even if you didn't personally commit it, if you knew about it, and helped or encouraged the person doing it.
So even though Gino could say he was just a bystander, the fact that he was actively participating in the videos and seems to be encouraging Johnny Somali could be used to show he was complicit.
Exactly. Prosecutors would look for evidence that shows Gino knew what was going on and contributed to the illegal or offensive activity. That could be things he said on camera, his actions in the videos, any plans or communication they had beforehand.
The video also mentions something called joint enterprise.
Right.
It's the idea that if people have a common goal, they can be held responsible together for any crimes committed while trying to achieve that goal. Could that apply to Gino and Johnny Somali?
It's possible. If it can be shown that they both understood, even if they didn't explicitly say it, that they wanted to create content that would push boundaries and provoke people, then that joint enterprise argument could be used to link their actions together, and that would make them both responsible for what happened.
So there are a few different legal approaches that could be taken, and they each have their own challenges. This really shows how law is trying to catch up with the online world, which changes so quickly.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this case so fascinating. We're not just talking about what two guys did. We're seeing a real clash between traditional legal ideas and this dynamic world of international social media. How this case turns out could have a big impact on how we deal with online behavior that crosses borders and goes against cultural norms.
It's a big deal. And beyond the legal side of things, there's also the cultural impact of their behavior. What are your thoughts on that?
Their actions touch on a sensitive issue. It's about how foreigners are perceived and that fine line between cultural exchange and cultural appropriation. By ignoring social norms and disrespecting cultural landmarks, they've basically reinforced the negative stereotype that foreigners are insensitive and entitled.
And the video shows comments from people in South Korea and Japan who are angry and disappointed, not just at Gino and Johnny Somali, but at the lack of respect for their cultures. It seems like they've caused real harm and offense.
It shows how important cultural sensitivity is, especially when you're creating content. If you're sharing your experiences with a global audience, you have to be mindful of the cultural context and avoid doing things that could be seen as disrespectful or offensive.
It's not about censoring yourself or pretending cultural differences don't exist. It's about approaching those differences with respect and understanding, recognizing that what you do can have a real impact on the people and places you encounter.
Exactly. It's about being a responsible traveler and content creator. And unfortunately, that message often gets lost when people are chasing views and internet fame.
The video talks about cultural ambassadorship. It argues that creators have a unique opportunity to connect cultures and help people understand and appreciate each other. Do you think Gino and Johnny Somali missed that opportunity?
It seems like they did, unfortunately. Instead of showing the beauty and richness of the cultures they visited, they chose to focus on being sensational and provocative. And in the end, they probably reinforced negative stereotypes and caused offense.
It's a shame. They had a platform that could have been used to promote understanding and break down barriers, but instead their actions probably contributed to more division and mistrust.
It highlights the need for content creators to be more aware of the power and responsibility they have. They can reach millions of people, so they need to think about the impact of their actions and try to be positive representatives of their own cultures and respectful guests in the cultures they visit.
So we've talked about the legal and cultural implications of Gino's actions. But now let's look at the psychology behind this content tourism. What makes people do these kinds of things, especially in foreign countries?
That's a really complex question, and there's no single answer. But we can explore some of the psychological factors that might be at play. One possibility is de-individuation, which basically means that people are more likely to act impulsively or do things they wouldn't normally do when they feel anonymous, like they're part of a crowd.
So being in a foreign country, surrounded by people who don't know them, might make them feel less inhibited and less accountable for their actions.
Exactly. It's like a psychological shield that lets them detach from their usual sense of self and do things they wouldn't normally even consider.
And the video also talks about how social media fuels this phenomenon. That constant pressure to create content that stands out and goes viral can lead people to push boundaries further and further, often without thinking about the consequences.
It's true. Social media is so competitive. Everyone is fighting for attention, likes, shares, more followers. And that can lead to people prioritizing shock value and sensationalism over ethical considerations.
It's almost like an addiction. The rush of getting views and likes becomes the reward. So they keep pushing the envelope, even if it means doing something unethical or causing harm.
That's a really good analogy. And it highlights the need to look at how social media platforms themselves might be encouraging this kind of behavior. How can we design these platforms to encourage positive, ethical content instead of rewarding those who exploit the system or cause harm?
So we've got the anonymity of being in a foreign country, the pressure to stand out on social media, and maybe even a psychological need for attention driving this behavior. It's a lot to unpack.
It is. And it's important to remember that not everyone who does this content tourism has the same motivations. Some might genuinely not realize they're being culturally insensitive, while others might be deliberately using those differences to get ahead.
It's a whole range of motivations and intentions, and it shows that we need to have more nuanced conversations about this, instead of just condemning everyone who pushes boundaries or challenges cultural norms.
I agree. We need to encourage critical thinking and responsible content creation. Creators should think about the impact of their actions, engage with other cultures respectfully, and put ethical behavior above viral fame.
Well said. So we've looked at the legal gray areas, the cultural sensitivities, the psychological motivations behind this, but there's still a key piece missing: the role of social media platforms themselves. What responsibility do they have in all of this? And what can they do to stop content tourism from getting even worse?
That's a big question, and it's at the heart of the whole debate about online content moderation. Let's explore that next.
We've talked about Gino and Johnny Somali, the legal side of things, the cultural impact, and the psychology behind this content tourism.
Right.
But what about YouTube?
Yeah.
What about these platforms? Are they responsible for what people upload and share?
That's the question everyone's asking right now.
Uh-huh.
And it's a tough one. The role platforms play in content moderation is really complex.
The video talked about how platforms like YouTube have rules, community guidelines about harassment, hate speech, and things like that.
Right.
But how well do they actually enforce these rules?
Yeah.
Especially when you're dealing with content from all over the world, different cultures.
It's a huge challenge.
Yeah.
Enforcing these rules globally is a massive undertaking. Platforms rely on algorithms and human moderators to try and flag and remove content that breaks the rules. But there are billions of users uploading hours of videos every minute.
I can't even imagine.
It's like trying to catch water in a sieve.
Right.
You know, what's considered offensive in one culture might be totally fine in another.
Right.
So how do these platforms deal with those differences?
Exactly. How do they make sure their rules are applied fairly everywhere?
It's a balancing act. And they're constantly trying to improve. They work with cultural experts and consult with local organizations to try to understand those nuances. But it's a work in progress, for sure.
The video mentioned that platforms are getting pressure from governments and groups to do more to stop harmful content.
Yeah.
Some people say they should be legally responsible for everything on their sites, like traditional media companies,
Right.
like newspapers or TV channels.
That's a big debate, for sure. There are strong arguments on both sides. Those who support platform liability say it would push platforms to invest more in moderation.
Right.
So they'd be more proactive about removing harmful content.
But wouldn't that hurt free speech? I mean, wouldn't platforms just play it safe and remove anything that could be seen as even slightly controversial?
That's what the other side argues. They say it would stifle free expression and lead to censorship.
It's like, how do you find that balance?
Exactly. How do you prevent harm without shutting down the flow of information and different opinions?
Yeah.
It's an ongoing discussion, and it needs a multifaceted approach. Platforms need better tools and processes for moderation,
Yeah.
and they need to be transparent about their decisions.
Okay.
Governments need to be clear about the legal frameworks for online content while respecting free speech.
That makes sense.
And as users, we need to be more careful about what we watch and share.
Right.
We can report harmful content and hold creators accountable.
Yeah, that's a good point. We all have a responsibility here. The video ends by asking, who's ultimately responsible for that line between entertainment and harmful behavior? Is it the creators, the platforms, the viewers, or all of the above?
It's definitely a shared responsibility. Creators need to think about the potential impact of their content and act ethically. Platforms need to moderate effectively, enforce their rules consistently, and be open about how they make decisions. And viewers, we all have a part to play in holding creators and platforms accountable.
We need to report harmful content and encourage critical thinking online.
It's a complex issue, no easy answers. But by recognizing that shared responsibility, we can work together to create a more ethical and responsible online world for everyone.
This has been a really eye-opening look at the challenges we face in this world of international social media, cultural sensitivity, legal stuff, the role of platforms, the psychology behind it all. There's just so much to consider.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how all these things intersect, and it shows how important these conversations are. We need to keep thinking critically and be willing to tackle complex issues.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Hopefully it's given you some things to think about, encouraged you to look deeper into how online content works in our globalized world.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and remember, the deep dive never really ends.